comments. Should we bring back HS2? 0207 862 2222 is the number. We'd love to hear from you. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has refused to rule out building the northern leg of HS2, which was scrapped by the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak last year over spiralling costs. Rachel Reeves says that she wouldn't make any promises without knowing where the money was coming from. The high-speed railway was supposed to transform public transport between London, the Midlands and the North, but the line was stopped at Birmingham after work was hit by delays and the project went way over budget. Rishi Sunak's decision was broadly criticised, including by Boris Johnson and Lord Cameron. So should the government bring back the project and build a high-speed rail from Birmingham to Manchester? That's the HS2 stretch, or is that throwing good money after bad? 0207 862 2222 is the number for your view. Dehenna, were you opposed to it?
I was, yeah. So I remember one of my first meetings as an MP, which will have been in the January after being elected in December. A group of us went into then Boris Johnson Prime Minister's office and put across our pitch for why we thought HS2 shouldn't happen. At this point, it was already, I think, 3 times over budget and no spades were actually in the ground. And my point was, if you understand the North and the challenges the North faces, you know that what is not needed is another rail line to London. You know that what is needed are connections between the major northern cities. We need a proper sort of Newcastle to Manchester line all the way across to Liverpool. We need better intercity connections. We need better town-to-town connections. And importantly, we need buses from village to village so people aren't forced to rely on their cars. And I was arguing that the enormous amount of money that had been put aside for HS2 could be better spent on more localised transport projects across the North that really would make a difference. Now, we didn't win that argument, unfortunately, but then with it being scrapped, I was kind of appalled that we scrapped it because it had gone over budget, but only the northern leg. So this major project that was supposed to benefit the North, that I thought never really would, we then took away the northern element completely. Madness, in my opinion. It
was part of the levelling up. Do you think it could really bring investment into the North, Owen? Massively. Or is it going to drain it back down to London?
Massively so. Look, for me, despite our problems, this is one of the richest countries on earth. Why can't we have a modern railway network like other countries do? It's ridiculous. It's not just, by the way, people focused on reducing journey times, and they are themselves, that's actually astonishing. Take an hour off the journey to Scotland, for example. London to Manchester, that was 2 hours to 1, but Birmingham to Nottingham, that takes over an hour. It falls down to 19 minutes. I mean, that's absurd. It's not just that. The whole point is capacity to deal with exactly what you just raised. Because at the moment, you get between often towns, these are, you know, they don't have the capacity. What HS2 does is it takes passengers and trains off those tracks and frees up more capacity on intercity and inter-town train routes. I agree with you on buses. I mean, the Conservatives deregulated the buses in the 1980s and bus routes collapsed in this country and also became extortionate. That's why we need publicly owned buses, as, for example, Andy Burnham in Manchester have been unveiling. But actually what HS2 does is it dramatically reduces journey times up in the North, including to Scotland, and it frees up space and capacity on our existing railway lines. Look, it's a modern railway network like the other countries. As somebody
that does the journey from London to Glasgow quite regularly, whether it's 4.5 hours or 3.5 hours is neither here nor there. Once I'm on a train, it's quite luxurious.
Well, actually,
the problem is getting on the train.
To be honest, for our economy, shortening these journey times will actually make a lot of difference. It makes it easier for people to do trips in single days, for example. You know,
do you think people are going to be commuting from Glasgow to London every day?
Probably not every day, but they'll be able to do far more journeys if you reduce it. But equally, look, as I mentioned, other journey times between, you know, these cities in the Midlands and the North, dramatically reducing it, making it much easier for people. You know, a lot of the problems is this is one of the most centralised, regionally unequal countries in the Western world. In other countries, you have big cities where they have vibrant economies. In Britain, and I speak as someone from Stockport, this city has become a black hole. It sucks everything in, and people feel that they can't stay in their own towns and cities and make a life of their own often. And we should be able to do that like in other countries, but you need to massively invest in our infrastructure to make that possible. Until we do that, it's not going to change.
No, but I agree with you. My point is the priority shouldn't be starting from the bottom end. We should be starting starting at the north, connecting cities. There is no reason that the kind of Manchester, Liverpool, even Newcastle triangle couldn't become a major economic region within its own right if it had decent transport links.
Yeah, of course.
If a decent train line was built, you could get from one side to the other in an hour easily.
HS2 will do that because it frees up the capacity from the existing.
No, but it won't.
So never mind going.
It should happen. That's why.
So never mind going Birmingham, Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Birmingham. You want to go Manchester, Leeds?
Absolutely, there has to be that east-west rail line.
Susan from Lincolnshire, what do you think? Will HS2 bring more money to the north?
Well, the more I listen to the people on your programme this morning, the angrier I am getting.
Okay,
when I moved here, we had buses and we had trains. Now we have got a bus in the morning and a bus in the evening, and that is it. I gave up driving because of my age. Now it has caused me to be totally housebound.
Oh. So you would prefer Dehenna's suggestion of getting more buses up and running?
Please, yeah, they'll not put a train railway up here again, but a bus would be. I mean, I can't go to town at 8:30 in the morning and then come back at 6 o'clock. I haven't got any decent towns or cities to spend that amount of time in, so I am now housebound.
I agree. Susan, this is awful, by the way, and I think this really sums up the experience of people across the country. It isn't either or. I want a massively improved train network and I want a massively improved bus network. The point I'd make is, look, people might not like me saying this, but the Conservatives deregulated and privatised our transport network. They did that to our buses. They did it to our trains. Look at the results.
Okay,
we have a disastrous railway network and we have a disastrous bus network.
With that in mind then, Owen, we've got a new government in place now, a Labour government. Should they not be focusing, changing all of that, rather than trying to keep up with the Joneses next door?
Whatever my massive problems with the Starmer government, they have committed to bring the railways under public ownership and to integrate it. At the moment, we've got a chaotic, fragmented railway. We need proper investment in that railway as well. I'm worried about the fiscal rules. But in terms of buses, they're allowing now, another good thing that they're going to do is allow local authorities to take over bus networks and create publicly owned buses. That's what Andy Burnham, the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, has done.
Yeah, in a devolution deal that I signed, that I negotiated.
Well, great. Well done. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. So my point is the Conservatives have been listening to local areas when it comes to devolution. No, allow that very action.
But the Conservatives opposed publicly owned buses. The only part of the country where you actually have a good functioning bus system is in London. And that's because you didn't get deregulation of the buses. Elsewhere you did. And what do private bus companies do? They cherry pick their routes. They go, this route doesn't make us that very much money, but it's good for the local community. But they don't care. They want to make profits. That's why you need a publicly owned bus network, because they don't go, we need profits for shareholders. They go, well, actually, we need to be responsive to the local communities. That's what we need to fix. OK, I think whether you like HS2 or you don't, Susan, I think everyone wishes you had more bus routes and could get out more. I'm really sorry to hear your situation. Thank you so much for calling and sharing that with us. John from County Durham, what do you think about HS2? Should it be back on the map? No. Why? Tell me why.
It was done away with because it was never necessary to create any more north-south route in this country. What we desperately need in Britain is an east-west link across the north of England.
Absolutely.
Between Manchester, Bradford, Leeds and Northallerton. We've got more than enough railways leading out of London, spreading in every direction, including north. We do not need another one building up and down north-south across the country. We need one east-west. That was more badly needed before the current HS2 route was enacted in the first place. And here's another thing for you, Storm. You're from Glasgow. You know, as you come from that area, one of the places that hasn't got a proper north-south connection is the train service from the south of Glasgow to the north of Glasgow. You can't go north-south across your home city. You've got the ability to go east-west there, both under Queen Street and Glasgow Central, but you can never go north-south. If you want to go from somewhere like Stirling or Perth, or even Inverness, and to go south to the north of England, to the Midlands, you can't do it through Glasgow.
John, you
because
know
there's
the
no
area
railway.
Very well. I'm impressed with your knowledge. So you just want better railway up north.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your call. Joanne from Derbyshire, what's your view? We're getting a lot of people saying that we need an east-west or a west-east connectivity rather than a north-south.
Well, I worked on the security for HS2.
And what's your insight there then?
You're going to be quite surprised, actually. We were thrown faeces, bottles of urine, constantly 24/7. The security bill alone was costing an astronomical amount of money. If you knew the truth, you'd fall off your chair.
Well, I mean, I'd like to know the truth, but I don't want to fall off my chair.
Joanne, can I ask, was this people protesting the works kind of going through their own communities, or was it something else?
It was, the problem with HS2 is we had professional trouble causers targeting the network.
Well,
they were coming from all over the UK. They knew nothing about rail, nothing about the benefits, and they were just hell-bent on causing trouble and stopping it.
Well, I think that was protests, I mean, I may be wrong, but protests because it was running through ancient woodland and things like that. So there was the environmental concern there, Joanne, although the argument would say that long term it would be better for the environment.
It's the failure of the government to explain the benefit of HS2, which I know I keep saying it's to free up capacity on those Northern and Midlands lines. That's the main advantage. It was never explained. So a lot of people think, well, it's not improving connectivity, but that's literally the main point of HS2. It's to take capacity off the existing lines so they improve.
Just very quickly, Joanne, I hear that the protesting must have been horrible for you, especially if you were the security on it. But do you think it should still have went ahead? Do you think the government should now bring it back, HS2?
HS2 would help a lot of people.
It would what? Sorry, I missed that. The line wasn't very good.
HS2 would help a lot of people and create jobs and benefit the areas.
All right, Joanne, thank you very much for your call.